Okay, good afternoon everyone. Hope everyone's having a great BPM show. My name's Mark, I'm the UK product specialist for Novation and Focusrite. So today I'm going to show you around our brand new flagship controller, the Launchpad Pro, and just show you how it can really be a great controller for all your Ableton Live performances, as well as a great controller for all your external hardware. So essentially, if we just have a look at the layout of the Launchpad Pro, we'll be working obviously in Ableton Session View. Launchpad Pro is a controller for our Session View in Ableton Live. So the first thing to notice, we have this 64 grid of buttons. And for the first time with the Launchpad Pro, we're getting instant color feedback from Ableton Live. So really, let's talk about why that's important. Well, first of all, it allows us to color code our sets. So here you can probably see on the screen, there are an array of colors. This allows me to color code my channels. So this channel here on the left-hand side is my drum channel. And this kind of gives me a more visual representation of what's going on. So this keeps me more focused on the controller and less focused on the screen. So we're getting full color RGB feedback from Ableton. So if we look at kind of the 64 grid of buttons, around the outside we've got 32 function buttons. So if we start with the top here, we've got our navigation buttons. As we know, some of our Ableton Live sets can get really, really vast and bigger than our 64 grid. So this allows us to move down and up and left and right through our Ableton session set. So to trigger a clip, all we need to do is press one of our available clips to launch. And we can bring in other clips and other musical elements to our performance. And then if we wish, we can trigger a whole row of clips, also known as a scene, and we get our full music. So that's kind of how we launch individual clips. That's how we launch scenes or rows of music. It allows us to kind of organize our live performance. So completing along the top of our navigation section here, we've got our session button. Our session button always allows us to return to the session view. We have our note mode, our device mode, and our user mode completing our top row. I'll go into those in a little more detail in a minute. But for those that know the original Launchpad, will remember we used to have a mixer button in the top right-hand corner here. We've actually removed that for the Launchpad Pro and given you a full row dedicated to mixer functionality at the bottom of Launchpad Pro. So if we look at those in a little bit more detail, we have track select here. The track select allows me to change the focus of any particular track that I'm looking at. So that allows me to see in more detail what's going on that channel. Perhaps there's some devices that I want to manipulate later in my live set, and I can do that. So if we move along, we've got mute. Mute allows us to kill anything in our performance. So if I just launch a scene of music here, and these effectively become kill switches. So I can take things out, and we can bring them back in again. And then we move along to solo. Solo allows us to isolate a particular channel. And we can bring everything back in again. Moving along, we have our volume control. And for the first time with Launchpad Pro, these pads are actually velocity sensitive. So if I latch into my volume page and we launch our drum track, velocity sensitivity allows me to get this kind of smooth fader glide on my volumes. So for here with my drum track, if I just press lightly, I get this kind of smooth, gradual transition. If we hit a little bit harder, we get a kind of fast transition. Another great thing is, obviously those that have used our Launchpad, there's some very gifted pad players out there. So if you want to make a quick change, yes, I can go in, I can make many changes on my volume page. But what I can do is if I hold volume, I can make one quick change, and then I can let go, and I go straight back into the session view. So it's another workflow thing. It just kind of speeds up the whole performance process. So I'll just go back in and just bring my volume back up there. Now, as well as our volume controls, we can use our pan control. And pan control allows me to send my drums to either the right or the left-hand side of the stereo spectrum. So if we've got a couple of hi-hat loops, we can get a more kind of stereo feel to our drums. moving along to our sends. On the previous Launchpad, we only had control of send A and send B. On Launchpad Pro, we have control of up to 8 send effects. And Launchpad Pro color codes these for a visual representation so we know instantly what we're controlling. So here, for instance, I've got, by default with Ableton, we've got a reverb. So we can now send our drums to the reverb channel. We get that kind of big spacey reverb behind our drums. And if we send it to our delay channel, we get a big delay on our drums there. And then finally at the end we have stop clip. This allows me to stop any individual channel from playing, or I can stop all channels from playing altogether. So that's our mixer section. So what really separates the Launchpad Pro from the previous Launchpad is Launchpad Pro is now a full production controller. So you can essentially build a whole track from the Launchpad Pro itself. And to allow me to do that, I need to record arm a channel that I'm going to use, say, drums or perhaps control over my pitched instruments. So I'm going to go ahead and record arm my drum channel. And you can see at the top here we have a note mode button. And Launchpad Pro recognizes that we have Ableton's drum rack loaded. So if I now hit note mode, I've got some of my drum samples loaded onto my drum pads here. It doesn't have to be drum parts. We can use vocal samples. We can use snippets of other full tracks. And we can now record these in and create our own musical composition. And to help me do that, I've got a brand new row of buttons down the left-hand side here. So when I'm ready to record, I just hit the global record button and we can then tap in our drum parts. And to help us do that, we've got a click track, so we can turn our metronome on and off. We have an undo button, so if we're not happy with something, we can undo that. And if we accidentally undo something, if we hold shift and then press redo, that will essentially redo the undo. We have a delete button. A delete button has many different functions. So for instance, if I record in my drums and I use our duplicate button, duplicate will allow me to take our recorded part and put it in a available clip slot below. And then I could use delete to actually delete individual drum hits, so we can create interesting drum transitions. So as well as that, we can also use delete to delete any clips we're not happy with. So we can hold delete and take any clips away. And if we just undo that, I'll bring those back in. And it's the same for Quantize. So once we've recorded our drum parts in, if they're a little bit loose, we can use the Quantize button and that will instantly snap our parts to the global tempo of our track. As well as that, if we hold shift and then press Quantize, that'll activate record Quantize. So the second we stop recording, it'll instantly and automatically snap the parts to the global tempo. Also, we can use Quantize. If we hold Quantize, we can actually quantize any of the audio or MIDI information within any of our clips in Ableton Live. So moving on from Quantize, we have our duplicate button. As I said, that will duplicate and put it in an empty available clip slot. And we have double, which will double our recorded part in length. So from 1 bar to 2 bar, 2 bar to 4 bar. So as well as the note mode, the drum mode, we can also control pitched instruments as well. So for instance, if I now record on perhaps a lead sound, in this case I'm using Massive, I can actually see that my note mode has changed from a drum rack to a pitched instrument, a chromatic keyboard layout. And here we can see I've got my purple keys, and these represent the root note or the tonic note. And then we have our octave. The blue keys on the Launchpad Pro represent the white keys on the keyboard, and the unlit keys represent the black keys on the keyboard. Now this is laid out in a chromatic way. So chromatic allows, let's use myself as an example. I don't really have too much musical theory background. I've been a DJ for 20 years. So when I'm producing electronic music, this allows me to actually play chords in shapes. So I can use 3 fingers and play a chord. And this really frees up my hand to allow me to play anything else within the scale. So that's the chromatic note mode. We also have a device mode as well. So if I go to track select, and then I have, let's say for instance here, we can see I have a compressor. If I now hit device mode, This allows me to control any of Ableton Live's devices on that channel. So what happens now is my Launchpad Pro gives me 8 parameter controls for that device. So we now have full control over Ableton Live's devices. So that's a brief overview of the Launchpad Pro. One of the best things as well for Launchpad Pro is you don't have to now use it with a computer. It's completely standalone. So on the rear of the Launchpad Pro, we have MIDI in and MIDI out. And in the box, we give you a breakout cable with a 5-pin DIN connection. And now we can actually control all our external hardware from the Launchpad Pro. So we can use the chromatic mode to actually control our synthesizers. So as well as a great performance tool for Ableton Live, this now becomes a full controller for all your external hardware. So that's a little overview of Launchpad Pro. If you want to come and see me, I'm on stand C100 in Novation and Focusrite. Thanks for stopping by. Cheers.